Captain Marcus Chen stepped off the transport ship onto the rocky surface of Zephyria Prime. The air was thick and humid, filled with strange smells that reminded him of a mix between ocean salt and burning metal. Around him, his small diplomatic team looked nervous as they adjusted their breathing masks. "Remember, no sudden movements," Marcus told his team. "The Zephyrians respect strength, but they see quick movements as signs of fear or aggression." Dr. Sarah Kim, his cultural advisor, nodded while checking her translation device. "The reports say they're about 8 feet tall on average. Their society is built around warrior honor codes." Marcus had read all the files during the 3-week journey to this planet. The Zephyrians controlled a strategic star system that humans needed for their expansion into this sector of the galaxy. Without access to their trade routes, human colonies would remain isolated and vulnerable. A deep rumbling sound echoed across the landing platform. Marcus looked up to see a group of aliens approaching. They were even more impressive in person than in the photos. The Zephyrians stood nearly 9 feet tall, with thick scaled skin that shimmered green and blue in the alien sunlight. Each had 4 powerful arms and legs built like tree trunks. Their faces were angular with large, intelligent eyes that seemed to study everything around them. Leading the group was clearly their commander. His scales were darker than the others, and scars covered his arms and chest like badges of honor. Behind him walked a female Zephyrian who was smaller but carried herself with obvious authority. Her scales were lighter, almost silver, and her eyes held a sharp intelligence that made Marcus think of his old academy professors. "I am Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Force," the large male announced in heavily accented English. His voice was deep and booming. "You are the human delegation, yes?" Marcus stepped forward and gave a slight bow, as was their custom. "I am Captain Marcus Chen, representing the Terran Exploration Corps. We are honored by your welcome." Veltar's 4 eyes looked Marcus up and down, clearly unimpressed. "You are smaller than I expected. Human warriors must be very different from what we were told." The female Zephyrian stepped forward. "I am Kasara, diplomatic translator and cultural advisor. Please excuse my mate's directness. He means no offense." Marcus noticed how she said mate with careful emphasis, making sure he understood their relationship. "No offense taken. We appreciate honest communication." They were led to a large building made of the same dark stone as the landing platform. The halls were wide and high, built for beings much larger than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, and Marcus could smell something like incense burning somewhere nearby. The meeting room was circular with a raised platform in the center. Veltar took his place on one side while Marcus and his team sat across from him. Kasara positioned herself between them, ready to translate not just words but cultural meanings. "Let us speak plainly," Veltar began, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Your people want access to our trade routes. What do you offer in return?" Marcus had prepared for this moment. "We offer technology exchange, medical knowledge, and agricultural techniques that could benefit both our peoples. We also offer our friendship and alliance." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Friendship? Alliance? These are soft words. What happens when your enemies come? Will your friendship stop their weapons?" "Our friendship comes with mutual defense agreements," Marcus replied calmly. "When one of us is threatened, we both respond. And if we are stronger, why would we need weak allies?" Veltar leaned forward, his voice growing louder. "Your people are small, soft, slow. You live short lives and die easily. What could you possibly offer warriors like us?" Marcus felt his team tense beside him, but he kept his voice steady. "Perhaps we're different from what you expect." "Different doesn't always mean weak." "Different?" Veltar stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over the humans. "I have studied your species. You have no claws, no armor, no real strength. You cannot even breathe properly on most worlds without machines. You are prey animals pretending to be predators." Dr. Kim whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. "Captain, this is going badly. Maybe we should request a recess." But Marcus stood up as well, meeting Veltar's gaze directly. "You're right that we're different. We don't have claws or thick skin, but that doesn't make us weak. It makes us adaptive." "Adaptive?" Veltar's voice dripped with contempt. "A nice word for too weak to fight properly." Marcus could see Kasara watching the exchange with growing concern. Her intelligent eyes moved between the 2 males, and he could tell she understood the dangerous direction this conversation was taking. "Your people conquered this world through strength. Marcus continued. That's impressive. But how did you conquer the vacuum of space? How did you build ships that travel between stars? Strength alone doesn't do that. We learned from others, Veltar admitted grudgingly. We took their knowledge after we defeated them. And how do you think those others gained that knowledge in the first place? They adapted. They learned. They solved problems that couldn't be solved with muscle and claws. Veltar's scales seemed to darken with anger. You dare suggest that your weakness is superior to our strength? The room fell silent. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment. Everything depended on what happened next. If he backed down, the negotiations would fail. If he pushed too hard, they might fail anyway. I'm not suggesting anything, Marcus said quietly. I'm simply saying that different kinds of strength exist. Perhaps you'd like to test that theory. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Veltar's four eyes widened slightly and several of his warriors shifted forward. Kessera stood up quickly, her expression alarmed. Veltar, she said in their own language, then switched to English. Perhaps we should continue these discussions tomorrow. Everyone is tired from travel. But Veltar was staring at Marcus with something that might have been respect. Are you challenging me, little human? Marcus's team looked terrified. Dr. Kim grabbed his arm, whispering, Captain, don't do this. We can find another way. Marcus gently removed her hand. According to your customs, a formal challenge can only be issued by warriors of equal standing. I wouldn't presume to challenge a commander of your reputation. Veltar's expression changed. Marcus had just shown knowledge of their culture while simultaneously suggesting that Veltar might not be confident enough to accept a challenge from a supposedly inferior opponent. Equal standing? Veltar rumbled. You command a ship and represent your people in war and peace. That makes you a warrior leader, same as me. He paused, studying Marcus carefully. Very well, human. I formally challenge you to single combat. Tomorrow at dawn in the traditional arena. The other Zephyrians made sounds of approval, but Kessera looked worried. Veltar, this is not necessary. The negotiations can continue without. The challenge is made and accepted, Veltar declared. By our ancient laws, this matter will be settled through combat. The winner's people will have the stronger position in all future negotiations. Marcus nodded calmly, though his heart was racing. I accept your challenge, Commander. Tomorrow at dawn. As they were escorted to their quarters, Dr. Kim pulled Marcus aside. Captain, have you lost your mind? He's twice your size with 4 arms and natural armor. This is suicide. Marcus looked out the window at the alien landscape. Maybe. But sometimes you have to take risks to show who you really are. Besides, he smiled grimly. He's assuming this will be the kind of fight he's used to. That might be his first mistake. That night, while his team worried and planned, Marcus prepared for a battle that would determine not just his fate, but the future of human-Zephyrian relations. The arena was carved from black stone and could hold thousands of spectators. As dawn broke over Zephyria Prime, the circular fighting pit filled with excited Zephyrians eager to watch their commander defeat the small human. The sound of their voices created a rumbling thunder that Marcus could feel in his chest. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber checking his equipment one final time. He had chosen light armor and flexible clothing that would allow maximum movement. His weapons were simple, a carbon fiber staff and a utility knife. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech. The Zephyrians had insisted on traditional weapons only. Dr. Kim paced nervously nearby. Captain, it's not too late. We could claim diplomatic immunity or medical reasons. No one would blame you for backing out. Yes, they would, Marcus replied, adjusting his grip tape. And more importantly, I would blame me. Sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds are bad. Lieutenant Torres, his security chief, shook his head. The odds aren't just bad, sir. They're impossible. Veltar weighs 3 times what you do. He's got 4 arms, natural armor, and he's been training for combat his entire life. Marcus smiled. All true, but he's never fought a human before. He doesn't know what we're capable of when we're pushed to our limits. A horn sounded outside, deep and booming. It was time. Marcus walked into the arena and was hit by a wall of sound. Thousands of Zephyrians roared their approval as Veltar entered from the opposite side. The commander looked magnificent in his traditional combat gear. His 4 arms were bare except for metal bracers, showing off muscles that looked like they could break rocks. His chest armor was decorated with symbols of his victories, and his weapons included a massive warhammer and a curved blade, longer than Marcus was tall. In the center of the arena stood an elderly Zephyrian wearing ceremonial robes. He raised his arms for silence, and the crowd gradually quieted. "Warriors," the elder announced in a voice that carried clearly across the stone arena. "Today we witness formal combat between Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Force and Captain Marcus Chen of the Human Terran Corps. This battle will be fought according to our ancient laws. Victory comes through surrender, incapacitation, or death. Do both warriors accept these terms?" "I accept," Veltar boomed, raising his hammer high. The crowd cheered. Marcus nodded. "I accept," the elder stepped back. "Then let combat begin." Veltar immediately charged forward, his warhammer raised high. Marcus could see the strategy. Use superior reach and strength to end the fight quickly. It was exactly what Marcus had expected. Instead of meeting the charge head-on, Marcus darted to the side at the last second. The hammer crashed into the stone where he had been standing, sending up a shower of rock chips. Before Veltar could recover, Marcus struck with his staff, aiming for the back of the commander's knee. The blow connected, but Veltar's thick scales absorbed most of the impact. The Zephyrian spun around with surprising speed, swinging his curved blade in a wide arc. Marcus had to dive and roll to avoid being cut in half. "Stand and fight, coward," Veltar shouted, advancing again. "Face me like a warrior." Marcus kept moving, using the full arena space. He had studied the layout carefully and knew every obstacle, every raised section of floor. "I am fighting," he called back. "Just not the way you expected." This infuriated Veltar further. In Zephyrian culture, running from combat was considered deeply shameful. But Marcus wasn't running away. He was running with purpose, leading Veltar where he wanted him to go. The next several minutes followed the same pattern. Veltar would attack with overwhelming force, and Marcus would avoid the strike while landing small, precise hits of his own. None of the hits did serious damage, but they were adding up. More importantly, Veltar was getting tired. The Zephyrian commander was built for short, brutal fights. His massive muscles could generate incredible power, but they also consumed energy quickly. Marcus, on the other hand, had trained for endurance. Human hunters had once chased prey for hours across African plains. That stamina was still part of their genetic heritage. Cassara watched from the VIP section, her expression growing more concerned as the fight continued. She could see what her mate could not. The human was fighting smart, not desperate. Every movement had purpose. "Why doesn't he just finish this?" muttered one of the Zephyrian warriors near her. "Because he can't," Cassara replied quietly. "The human is making him work for every attack. He's using Veltar's strength against him." As if to prove her point, Veltar swung his hammer in another powerful overhead strike. But this time, Marcus didn't dodge completely. Instead, he caught the handle of the hammer with his staff and used Veltar's own momentum to redirect the blow, sending the commander stumbling forward. The crowd gasped. No one had ever used Veltar's strength to make him lose balance. Marcus followed up immediately, striking at pressure points he had studied in the Zephyrian anatomy files. His knife found the gap between armor plates, drawing first blood. It was only a small cut, but it had a massive psychological impact. Veltar touched the wound and stared at the purple blood on his fingers. In all his years of combat, very few opponents had ever managed to cut him, and none of them had been half his size. "Impossible," he breathed. "Not impossible," Marcus replied, breathing hard but still moving. "Just different." Veltar roared in fury and launched into a series of attacks that would have killed most opponents instantly. But Marcus had been watching his patterns, learning his timing. He slipped between the strikes like water, occasionally landing hits of his own. The crowd was quieter now. This wasn't the quick victory they had expected. Some were even beginning to mutter in their own language, wondering how a small human was lasting so long against their champion. The turning point came when Veltar made a mistake. Frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, he overcommitted to a strike with all four arms at once. Marcus saw the opening and took it. He dropped low and swept Veltar's legs while the commander was off balance. The massive Zephyrian crashed to the ground, his weapon scattered. Before he could recover, Marcus was on top of him, his knife at Veltar's throat. The arena fell completely silent. "Yield," Marcus said quietly, just loud enough for Veltar to hear. Veltar's four eyes stared up at him in shock. The knife was sharp enough to cut through his scales, and they both knew it. After a long moment, the commander's body relaxed. "I yield." Veltar said, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus immediately stepped back and helped the larger warrior to his feet. The gesture surprised everyone watching, including Veltar himself. The elder referee looked stunned but recovered quickly. The victory goes to Captain Marcus Chen of the humans. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered for the unexpected upset, while others sat in shocked silence. Their greatest warrior had been defeated by a creature they considered weak and soft. Marcus walked over to where his team was sitting, his legs shaky with exhaustion. Dr. Kim rushed down to check him for injuries. "Captain, that was incredible. How did you know you could do that?" Marcus looked back at Veltar, who was being helped by his own warriors. "I didn't know. I just hoped that what makes us human would be enough." Kisara appeared beside them, her expression unreadable. "Captain Chen, may I speak with you privately?" "There are complications we need to discuss." Marcus nodded, though he was too tired to imagine what could be more complicated than what had just happened. He had no idea that the real challenge was just beginning. Marcus sat in a private chamber adjacent to the arena, still catching his breath from the fight. His body ached in places he had forgotten existed, but he was alive and victorious. Dr. Kim was treating a few minor cuts while Lieutenant Torres stood guard at the door. Kisara entered the room alone, her silver scales catching the light from the crystal lamps on the walls. Her expression was serious, almost troubled. "Captain Chen, we need to discuss the consequences of your victory," she began without preamble. Marcus looked up from the medical scanner Dr. Kim was running over his ribs. "Consequences? I thought winning the fight would strengthen our negotiating position." "It will," Kisara agreed. "But it will also create other obligations. There are ancient laws that govern formal combat between warriors, especially when one warrior defeats another's mate." Dr. Kim paused her medical work. "What kind of obligations?" Kisara took a deep breath. "When a warrior defeats another in formal combat, the victor gains the right to claim the defeated warrior's possessions, territory, and family members. It's called the right of conquest." The room fell silent. Marcus stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "Family members?" Lieutenant Torres asked slowly. "Including spouses," Kisara confirmed. "By defeating Veltar, Captain Chen has the legal right to claim me as his bride." Marcus stood up so quickly that he made himself dizzy. "That's barbaric. I didn't fight him to take you away from him. I fought him to prove a point about human capabilities." "I understand that," Kisara said calmly. "But our laws don't consider motivation, only results. The right exists whether you choose to exercise it or not." Dr. Kim looked horrified. "Surely this is just an old law that nobody follows anymore." "On the contrary," Kisara replied. "These laws form the foundation of our society. They haven't been invoked in over 2 centuries because our warriors rarely lose to outsiders, but they are still binding." Marcus began pacing the small room. "Then I refuse the claim. I don't want to own anyone, and I certainly don't want to break up your relationship with Veltar." "It's not that simple," Kisara warned. "If you refuse the right of conquest, it suggests that either you don't understand our laws, which makes you unfit for diplomatic relations, or you consider the victory meaningless, which insults Veltar's honor even further." Lieutenant Torres frowned. "And if he accepts? Then by law I become his responsibility. My previous bonds are dissolved and I am considered part of his household until death or formal release." Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "What do you want?" "This affects you more than anyone." Kisara was quiet for a long moment. "What I want is complicated. Personally, I have been studying human culture for months in preparation for these negotiations. Your people fascinate me in ways that I'm only beginning to understand. Politically, this situation could either destroy any chance of alliance or create something entirely new. How so? If you handle this correctly, it could demonstrate that humans understand and respect our laws, while also showing that you operate by different principles. That combination might intrigue my people enough to take your proposals seriously." Dr. Kim shook her head. "This is insane. We're talking about a person's life, not a political strategy." "In Zephyrian society, the two are often the same," Kisara explained. "We don't separate personal relationships from political ones the way humans do." Before Marcus could respond, the door opened and Veltar entered. He looked subdued but not angry. His wounds had been treated and he wore simple clothing instead of his combat gear. "Captain Chen," he said formally, "I have come to discuss the consequences of my defeat." Marcus gestured to a chair. Please sit. Kessera was just explaining the right of conquest to us. Veltar sat heavily. I should have explained this before the combat. I assumed I would win, so the law would not matter. He looked at his mate with an expression that might have been sadness. Now it matters very much. Veltar, Marcus said carefully, I want you to know that I never intended for this to happen. If there's a way to handle this that doesn't hurt you or Kessera, I want to find it. The Zephyrian warrior studied Marcus with his 4 eyes. You could have killed me in the arena. The law would have permitted it. Instead, you helped me stand. This tells me something about your character. What does it tell you? That perhaps humans are more complex than I believed. You fight with honor but show mercy to the defeated. You claim victory but worry about its consequences for others. These are not the actions of a simple predator or prey animal. Kessera watched the exchange between the 2 males with obvious interest. Veltar, what are you thinking? I am thinking that perhaps this situation, uncomfortable as it is, might serve a greater purpose. He turned to Marcus. Captain, if you formally claim the right of conquest over my mate, what would you do with that right? Marcus considered the question seriously. I would treat Kessera as an equal partner, not property. I would respect her intelligence and her autonomy, and I would work to find a way to honor both your laws and human principles. Even though this would mean she could never return to me? The pain in Veltar's voice was obvious, and Marcus felt it like a physical blow. I don't know. This is all new to me. But I promise I would never abuse the position or treat her badly. Kessera spoke up. There is another consideration. If Captain Chen claims me according to our laws, I would be in a unique position to serve as a cultural bridge between our peoples. No Zephyrian has ever lived among humans as an equal. The knowledge I could gain might benefit both races. Veltar's scales darkened slightly. You want this? I want what's best for our people, Kessera replied diplomatically. And I believe understanding humans might be critical to our survival in the larger galaxy. Dr. Kim looked between all of them. Are we seriously considering this? The implications are staggering. What happens when Earth Command finds out that our lead negotiator claimed an alien wife through combat? That depends on how we present it, Marcus said slowly. If we frame it as a diplomatic arrangement necessary to secure the alliance, it might be acceptable. Especially if it works. Lieutenant Torres raised a practical concern. What about you, Captain? Are you prepared for the personal implications of this arrangement? Marcus looked at Kessera, trying to imagine what life would be like with an 8-foot-tall 4-armed alien as a partner. It was overwhelming to even consider. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm prepared to try if it serves the greater good, and if Kessera truly consents to the arrangement. Kessera stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien landscape. There is one more thing to consider. If I accept this arrangement, I would be abandoning everything familiar to me. My home, my culture, my position in society. That's not a decision to make lightly. But, Marcus sensed there was more. She turned back to face them. But I have been studying the reports of human space exploration. Your people don't just survive in new environments. You thrive in them. You adapt. You innovate. You find solutions that no one else imagines. I want to learn how to do that. Veltar stood as well. If this is truly what you choose, Kessera, then I will support it. The alliance between our peoples is more important than my personal feelings. Marcus was amazed by the Zephyrian's nobility. Veltar, you're a better man than I am. I don't know if I could be so generous if our positions were reversed. Perhaps that's the difference between us, Veltar replied. You think with your emotions. We think with our duty. Both have their strengths. Kessera nodded slowly. Then it's decided. Captain Chen, I formally consent to your claim under the right of conquest, but I want this to be a true partnership, not ownership. Marcus extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Kessera reached out with one of her 4 hands and shook it. Partners, Marcus agreed, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Human Research Station orbiting Kepler 442b, watching Kessera work with a team of human engineers. She was helping them design a new type of atmospheric processor that could work on worlds with Zephyrian-type environments. Her 4 arms moved independently as she manipulated holographic displays, showing a level of multitasking that amazed everyone who worked with her. The arrangement had been more challenging than either of them had expected. Captain, Dr. Kim approached with her daily report. The cultural integration studies are showing interesting results. Kessara's presence has changed how our people think about alien cooperation. Marcus nodded, still watching his partner work. How so? Before, our approach to alien contact was mostly defensive. We assumed that different meant hostile. But watching Kessara adapt to our technology and social structures has shown us that different can mean complementary. It had been a difficult 3 months for all of them. Kessara had struggled with human concepts like democratic decision-making and collaborative problem-solving. Her society was based on clear hierarchies and individual achievement. The idea that a group could make decisions without a single leader seemed chaotic to her at first. Meanwhile, Marcus had been learning about Zephyrian honor codes and their complex social obligations. He discovered that almost every action had deeper meaning in their culture. Simple things like how food was shared or how people entered a room could send important messages about respect and status. There's been another development, Dr. Kim continued. Earth Command wants a full report on the partnership arrangement. They're considering it as a model for future alien contacts. Marcus wasn't surprised. The results had been impressive. In 3 months, they had solved several technical problems that had stumped human engineers for years. Kessara's different perspective and physical capabilities had opened up new possibilities that no one had considered. And the Zephyrians? How are they responding? Mixed reactions. Some see Kessara as a traitor who abandoned her people for aliens, but others are curious about what she's learning. Veltar has been sending regular communications asking for reports. Marcus felt a pang of guilt whenever Veltar was mentioned. The Zephyrian commander had handled the situation with remarkable grace, but Marcus knew it still caused him pain. There had been a few awkward video calls where Veltar asked about Kessara's welfare with the careful politeness of someone trying not to show emotional attachment. Captain Chen, a voice called from across the observation deck. Marcus turned to see Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park from the engineering department. Kessara wants to show you something. She says it's important. Marcus made his way to the engineering lab where Kessara was working with a new piece of equipment. She had grown more comfortable with human clothing over the past months, though she still preferred the loose-fitting jumpsuits that accommodated her 4 arms. Marcus, she said, looking up from her work, I want to show you what we've accomplished. On the display screen was a detailed schematic of a new type of space habitat. It combined human life support technology with Zephyrian structural engineering principles. The result was something that could house both species comfortably, while being stronger and more efficient than anything either race had built alone. This is incredible, Marcus said, studying the design. How long would it take to build? With both our peoples working together? Perhaps 2 years for a prototype. But that's not the most important part. Kessara manipulated the display to show the habitat's defensive capabilities. The Zephyrian engineering made it incredibly strong, while human technology provided sophisticated early warning and response systems. A base like this could protect colonies from almost any threat, she explained. Neither humans nor Zephyrians could build something this effective alone. Marcus understood the implications immediately. This isn't just about engineering, is it? It's about proving that our partnership works on a larger scale. Exactly, but there's a problem. Kessara's expression grew serious. I've been receiving messages from Zephyria Prime. Not official communications, private ones from warriors who are concerned about the direction of our alliance. What kind of concerns? Some believe that working too closely with humans will make Zephyrians soft. They think your influence will weaken our warrior culture. Others worry that humans are too unpredictable to be trusted as allies. Marcus had feared something like this might happen. And what do you think? Kessara was quiet for a moment. I think they're afraid of change, but I also think they have some valid points. Human and Zephyrian values are very different. Sometimes I struggle to understand how your people can make decisions when everyone has a different opinion. Democracy is messy, Marcus admitted, but it also means that everyone has a voice. That diversity of perspectives usually leads to better solutions. Usually. But what happens when you need to make quick decisions? What happens in a crisis when there's no time for discussion and consensus? It was a good question, and one that Marcus had been thinking about himself. I suppose that's when leadership matters most. Someone has to be willing to make the hard choices. Before Kessara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and automated announcements echoed through the corridors. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels approaching the system. Marcus and Kezara rushed to the command center where they found organized chaos. Officers were manning their stations while displays showed tactical information about the approaching ships. Commander Rodriguez, the station commander, looked up as they entered. "Captain Chen, we've got a problem. 3 unidentified ships just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They're not responding to communications and they're heading straight for us." Marcus studied the tactical display. The ships were unlike anything in human or Zephyrian databases. They were large, angular, and moving with obvious hostile intent. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked. 43 minutes at current speed, reported the tactical officer. "What about defenses?" Commander Rodriguez shook his head. "This is a research station. We have basic shields and a few defensive turrets, but nothing that could stop a serious attack." Kezara stepped forward. "May I see the sensor data on those ships?" Rodriguez looked at Marcus, who nodded. Kezara studied the information with her 4 eyes moving independently to track different data streams. "I've seen designs like this before," she said finally. "These are Skorath vessels. They're raiders who attack isolated colonies and stations." Skorath? Marcus had never heard the name. "Aggressive scavengers. They take what they want and destroy what they can't use. They've been a problem in this sector for decades, but they usually avoid areas protected by major powers." "Then why are they here now?" Kezara's expression darkened. "Because they know this station represents an alliance between humans and Zephyrians. If they can destroy it, they prove that our cooperation is weak." Marcus understood immediately. This wasn't just a random raid. It was a test of the alliance itself. "Commander Rodriguez, can we get a message to the nearest Zephyrian patrol?" "Not in time. The closest patrol is 6 hours away." "What about human reinforcements?" 8 hours minimum." Marcus looked at the tactical display again. 3 hostile ships against 1 lightly defended research station. The math was not encouraging. "Captain," Kezara said quietly, "I may have an idea, but it would require trusting me completely and giving me authority over both human and Zephyrian personnel." Marcus met her 4-eyed gaze. This was the moment their partnership would be truly tested. Not in a laboratory or conference room, but in a real crisis where lives hung in the balance. "What do you need?" he asked. Kezara smiled, showing teeth that were definitely not human. "I need you to let me be what I was trained to be, a Zephyrian warrior. But one who thinks like a human." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Do it." As Kezara began issuing orders in both languages, Marcus realized that they were about to discover whether their cultural partnership could survive its first real test. Kezara moved to the command center's main tactical display, her forearms working simultaneously across multiple control interfaces. Marcus watched in fascination as she seemed to process information faster than any human could manage. "Commander Rodriguez," she said without looking up, "I need you to reroute all available power to the fabrication bays. We're going to build something." "Build what?" "We only have 37 minutes before those ships arrive." 37 minutes is enough. Kezara's fingers flew across holographic controls. "Marcus, I need you to contact every human engineer on this station. Tell them we're about to attempt something that's never been tried before." Marcus activated the station-wide communication system. "All engineering personnel to Fabrication Bay 3 immediately. This is a priority alpha emergency." Within minutes, 24 humans and the handful of Zephyrian technical advisors had gathered in the fabrication bay. Kezara stood before them, her silver scales catching the bright lights of the manufacturing equipment. "Listen carefully," she began. "We have 34 minutes to save this station and everyone on it. The Skorath ships approaching us are stronger than our defenses, but they have a weakness. They rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. They don't expect their targets to fight back effectively." Dr. Elizabeth Warner, the chief engineer, raised her hand. "What are you proposing?" Kezara activated a holographic display that showed the approaching enemy ships alongside detailed schematics of the station's defensive systems. "We're going to combine human adaptability with Zephyrian warrior tactics. The humans will handle technical modifications while the Zephyrians coordinate tactical deployment. But we all work together as one unit." Marcus stepped forward. "What do you need us to do?" "First, we modify the fabrication equipment to produce specialized projectiles, not traditional weapons, something the Skorath won't expect. Second, We use the station's industrial manipulator arms as makeshift artillery. Third, we coordinate our response to look like a much larger force than we actually are. The humans looked skeptical, but the Zephyrian advisors were nodding approvingly. In their culture, improvised tactics and creative use of available resources were considered marks of excellent warriors. It's crazy enough that it might work, admitted Dr. Warner. What kind of projectiles are we talking about? Kessera brought up another schematic. Dense metal spheres filled with industrial foam that expands on impact. When they hit the Skorath ships, they won't cause much structural damage, but they'll block sensors and weapon ports. The Skorath will think they're under attack by some kind of advanced weapon system. And the manipulator arms? We program them to fire in coordinated patterns that simulate multiple defensive platforms. The Skorath sensors will detect multiple firing positions and assume we have much heavier defenses than we actually do. Marcus could see the brilliance of the plan. It used human technological creativity and Zephyrian tactical thinking to create something neither species would have thought of alone. How long to set this up? He asked. 28 minutes if everyone works at maximum efficiency. Dr. Warner looked around at her team. You heard her. Let's move. What followed was the most intense 28 minutes of Marcus's life. Human engineers worked with desperate efficiency to modify fabrication equipment, while Zephyrian advisors calculated firing solutions and tactical positions. Kessera moved between groups, coordinating the effort with a level of multitasking that only her four-armed physiology made possible. Marcus found himself working alongside Veltar, who had arrived on the station just days earlier for a routine inspection. The Zephyrian commander said nothing about the awkwardness of the situation, focusing entirely on the tactical problem. The Skorath will expect us to surrender or flee, Veltar explained as he programmed targeting systems. When we fight back, they'll become confused. Confusion creates opportunity, and if this doesn't work, Veltar's four eyes met Marcus's gaze. Then we die fighting, which is better than dying helpless. With 5 minutes to spare, the improvised defense system was ready. The station's industrial arms had been converted into projectile launchers, loaded with specially fabricated spheres designed to disrupt rather than destroy. Sensor arrays had been reprogrammed to create false readings that would make the station appear to have much heavier armament. Skorath, vessels entering weapon range, reported the tactical officer. All stations ready, Kessera announced. Remember, we want to create confusion, not necessarily destruction. Make them think they're facing something they don't understand. The 3 Skorath ships approached in standard attack formation, confident in their superior firepower. Marcus watched on the tactical display as they moved into optimal firing position. They're powering up weapons, the tactical officer reported. Fire, Kessera ordered. The station's modified industrial arms launched their unusual projectiles in a coordinated barrage. At the same time, the sensor arrays created false signatures that made it appear as though the shots were coming from multiple hidden defensive platforms. The projectiles struck the lead Skorath ship and exploded into expanding clouds of industrial foam. Within seconds, the ship's forward sensors were completely blocked and several weapon ports were sealed shut. What the hell was that? Came a confused transmission from the Skorath ship. The other 2 ships immediately changed course, clearly not expecting any resistance, let alone something they couldn't identify. Their communications filled with confused chatter as they tried to figure out what kind of weapon had just attacked them. Fire second volley, Kessera ordered. Another coordinated barrage struck the second ship, with similar results. Now 2 of the 3 attackers were partially blinded and confused. The third ship, more cautious than its companions, began scanning intensively for the hidden weapon platforms that their sensors indicated must be present. They're looking for guns that don't exist, Marcus realized. Exactly, Kessera smiled. Now we spring the trap. She activated the station's emergency communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. Skorath vessels, you are surrounded by joint human-Zephyrian defense platforms. Surrender immediately or face total destruction. Message was accompanied by fake sensor readings that suggested the presence of multiple, heavily armed ships just outside normal detection. Range. Marcus watched in amazement as the Skorath ship's formation completely broke apart. Faced with an unknown weapon system and the apparent presence of a superior force, They did exactly what Kessera had predicted. They fled. All Skorath vessels withdrawing at maximum speed, reported the tactical officer. They're jumping to hyperspace. The command center erupted in cheers. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief as the adrenaline finally caught up with him. Kessera turned to address the mixed group of humans and Zephyrians who had worked together to save the station. What we accomplished here today proves something important. Neither humans nor Zephyrians could have succeeded alone, but together we created something that was greater than the sum of our parts. Veltar stepped forward. I owe you an apology, Captain Chen. When you defeated me, I thought you had simply gotten lucky. Today I see that human tactics are not weakness disguised as strength. They are a different kind of strength entirely. Marcus shook his head. And I've learned that Zephyrian warrior traditions aren't just about brute force. They're about honor, courage, and the willingness to risk everything for what matters. Dr. Warner, covered in grease from the fabrication work, grinned broadly. So what happens now? Do we write a report about how an impossible defense strategy somehow worked? Kessera and Marcus exchanged glances. Over the past months, they had built something unique. A partnership that honored both human innovation and Zephyrian strength. No, Marcus said finally. We write a report about how two very different species learn to work together. And then we figure out how to teach everyone else to do the same thing. 6 months later, the Joint Human Zephyrian Defense Academy graduated its first class of integrated officers. The curriculum combined human tactical flexibility with Zephyrian warrior discipline, creating a new generation of leaders prepared for the challenges of an increasingly complex galaxy. Marcus and Kessera stood together at the graduation ceremony, watching young humans and Zephyrians take their oaths of service side by side. What had begun as a diplomatic crisis and an awkward legal arrangement had become something neither of them had expected, a true partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Do you think we've succeeded? Kessera asked, watching the new graduates. Marcus smiled as he saw human and Zephyrian cadets helping each other with their ceremonial gear. I think we've made a good start. In the audience, Veltar sat with other Zephyrian dignitaries, his expression proud. He had found love again with another warrior, but he had also found something equally valuable. The knowledge that his sacrifice had helped create something larger than any individual relationship. The galaxy was changing, and perhaps for the first time in centuries, it was changing for the better.